Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to the segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. The recitation is from Sri Rag Ki Var, Slok Mahalla Tija. Satgur Jini na Seveyo, sabde na kito vichar. Antar gyan na ayo, mirtak hai sansar. Lakh 84 फेर पया, मर जम्मे होए खुआर. सतगुर की सेवा सो करे, जिसनो आप कराए सोए. सतगुर विच नाम निधान है, कर्म प्राप्त होए. सच रते गुर शब्द स्यों, तिन सच्ची सदा लिव होए. नानक जिसनो मेले न विछड़े, सहज समावे सोए. महला तीजा. सो भगौती जो भगवंते जाने, गुर प्रसादी आप पछाणे. तावत राखे एकत कर आणे, जीवत मरे हर नाम वखाणे. ऐसा भगौती उत्तम होए, नानक सच समावे सोए. महला तीजा. अंतर कपट भगौती कहाए, पाखंड पार ब्रह्म कदे न पाए. पर निंदा करे अंतर मल लाए, बाहिर मल धोए मन की झूठ न जाए. सतसंगत स्यों बाद रचाए, अनंदिन दुखिया दूजे पाए रचाए. हर नाम न चेते बहु कर्म कमाए, पूरब लिखिया सो मेटना न जाए. नानक बिन सतगुर सेवे मोख न पाए. पौड़ी. सतगुर जिनी ते आया, से कड़ न सवाही. सतगुर जिनी ते आया, से त्रिपत आगाही. सतगुर जिनी ते आया, तिन जम डर नाही. जिनको हुआ कृपाल, हर से सतगुर पैरी पाही. तिन एथे ओथे मुख उजले, हर दरगह बहंदे जाही. So from a Gurmat perspective, without self-knowledge, the world is dead, spiritually dead, that is. Antar gyan na ayo, mirtak hai sansar, mirtak, dead. So what does spiritual death mean? It means a separation, a cleavage, a fracture of the self with the ego consciousness. There is a fracture. And the result is that we live in a sort of a delusion. We go astray, and we then enter a cycle of self-perpetuating, what Bani calls lakh 84 फेर पया मर जन्मे होए हुआर. Now the terms lakh 84 and mar janme occur very frequently in Gurbani, and traditionally these terms translate as reincarnation. But contemporary interpretations read them as figures of speech. Now, without getting into the opposing opinions, our perspective is to try and understand these terms against their philosophical backdrop, because the genius of Guru Nanak and his successors was to indeed take concepts that were around forever, if you will, that people were familiar with, and in their communication they spoke within those concepts like lakh 84 mar janme, but then infused them with another meaning, with a different meaning. So we should be careful in how we understand lakh 84 mar janme, things of that nature. So let's see how to view this here. The two primary goals of human life are replication and evolution. I think that much we can all observe. Replication happens instinctively. It's happening and it carries on through the transmission of our genes to our descendants. But what about evolution of the mind, which also has to happen? That takes a very conscious effort. This passage tells us that we are dead because we have not evolved our mind or / consciousness from the ego self to the self. In its natural state, the ego self is asleep, dead to the self, because it is tied to the world of Maya, the veil of delusion, which conceals the self's luminosity. As a result, we are led down the path of self-deception and generate actions that are toxic and unproductive, self-defeating and repetitive. Barobar. So, this ego self is the collective dysfunction of humanity, and each one of us inherits this. So it is in this sense that we are dead and not awake. So the goal then is so pagoti jo pagavante jane, to know that transcendental self within. And that involves a killing of the ego self. Jiva tamare haranama bakharne. So Gurmat calls out the possibility of radical transformation, awakening of the ego self, which is empowering. So it empowers us with the tools and knowledge, and together we call the tools and knowledge the Satgur. So the Satgur, or the true enlightener, is needed. Satgur which naam nidana hai, karam parapat hoy. So Gurbani is obviously very emphatic that no amount of external ritual or religious practice will make a difference in the slaying of this inner demon called the ego self. Pakhand par baram kade na paye. The way involves a restraint of the mind. Dhavat rakhe, to restrain. Ikat kar aane. Only then will that experience of oneness occur inside. So renouncing the mind's capacity for self-deception and slander, andar kapat bhagavati kahai. So fortunate indeed are those who have discovered the teachings of the Satgur and enshrined them within their hearts, for they have evolved to the consciousness of the self. Tin ethe othe mukh ujjale har dargah pende jaye. With those thoughts, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.